I think that the topic of consolidation is, on the one hand, very interesting, on the other hand, is quite difficult to tackle. We are the stakeholders and participants of the consolidation process. We are not allowed to speak directly about some of the aspects that are underpinning this transformation. We often think what the next transformation on the market is going to be and what is the price that we already paid for the transformation that just ended. I'm speaking about this in the context of private equity investors' expectations. The second thought that came to my mind has to do with what we heard at the beginning regarding the upcoming 10 years, regarding what challenges we're going to have to face when connecting up to the broadband internet. I do concur with the opinion that we heard. I think that what is going to happen is going to generate further consolidatory processes on the market. We also heard about differences between the United States and Europe. I think in both geographic locations, these consolidation processes are taking place regardless of what the differences between those two markets are. We also touched up on the interesting topic of cross-industry cooperation. I think that we can build many a case showing that our sector of the industry is already participating in these processes of mergers or fusions or consolidation processes between different sectors of the economy that might not be as close as they're going to be soon. And the final thought that I have has to do with the green energy. This is an interesting aspect, especially when we look at what is happening in the data center sector. The majority of transactions that are taking place on the market are oriented at markets that have already made their mark when it comes to the green energy. I'm talking about the Nordic countries, Iceland included. We also hear that if a data center shows that they use clean energy, they can have a great competitive edge. Allow me to move on to my presentation real quick. Arthur Doolittle conducted a survey among the managers of telcos, and it turns out that all directors expect these consolidatory processes to be continued. Many of them think that these processes are the fundamental aspects of their strategy implementation. And what is also interesting is that they often note that the telecommunication sector sees value in partnership, but on the other hand is very resistant and not always takes these processes to liking. That's going to be one of the threads that I want to bring up throughout our discussion today. When it comes to the scope of my brief presentation, it is going to be as follows. I want to focus on the following key aspects. Why is the consolidation taking place is number one. Why are we seeing telcos emerging and doing acquisitions? Then I want to move on to the topic that was brought up before on the breakdown of the infrastructure, on the separation of infrastructure, including fiber optics. And at the end, I want to talk about a different kind of consolidation, so to speak, namely about different partnerships that are taking place on this market and that are going to continue. As you can see on this screen, the M&A transactions have been quite numerous recently, many of them taking place between 2012, 2015, 16, that had to do with converging processes of fixed and mobile and cable operators. to be able to use the effects of scale, to use the synergy effects, and to be able to get into the new convergent sector that has been created for a number of years in different countries, including Poland. In Poland, the consolidatory processes have been quite dynamic. The biggest, I think, or one of the biggest transactions that took place was the consolidation between the Digital Polsat and Polkomtel. The following years saw many other interesting trades. In 2019, we noted something that's going to go down in history. It was the year of a number of consolidation processes taking place, and these are going to be continued. When are these processes happening? I don't think I'm going to discover the wheel when I say the following. It is worthwhile noting that the majority of the stakeholders are trying to generate some kind of beneficial outcome of these processes. It is very often hard to talk about and carry out the revenue stream as planned. The OPEX and CAPEX are easier subjects to discuss, although they require a rigorous approach in their implementation. The topic that we are now touching on has to do with the legislation. When we look at the European market, we can say that we've seen many processes beginning, but not all of them delivered successfully, either by both sides that initiated the process continuing their operations or the process being approved by the regulator. We have three examples coming out of Denmark, Telia, Telenor, where even though the discussion was progressing, the process was not completed. Both sides resigned from closing the deal for lack of regulatory consensus. The premises were not met. Another example coming from Great Britain, Britain O2 with O3, two carriers. Both sides made concessions. The remedies were put in place, but the regulator stopped the process. And then we have the Wind merging with the O3 operator in Italy. Concessions were made on both sides in the form of the sale of a big part of the spectrum, the sale of the jurisdiction of towers, and that process was completed. So as we can see, the regulatory part plays an important role. When it comes to thinking about the potential acquisition or consolidation processes. Like I said before, convergence constitutes one of the major drivers of consolidation, but there are other factors: competition, the level of it. The higher the competition on the market, the more we see some of these processes forced by some of the players. But there are other factors that we have to consider. On the one hand, we have the efficiency of investment, we have the ROI aspects, and we have the performance aspects of different carriers to be factored in. Sometimes you see carriers that have to sell some of the assets to be able to get out of debt. For some operators, it will be in the form of sale. In others, it will be an acquisition in order to consolidate the assets. Now allow me to move on to another important aspect that was touched on a couple of months ago at yet another conference. I'm talking about the way of looking at some of the assets belonging to some of the carriers. What we see is a global and European tendency where some of the assets are sold to other independent carriers or financial investors.
So here comes a question. Will we see these processes in Poland? And in more general terms, the processes in Europe and in Poland in particular may stimulate market consolidation. When you look at base station towers for mobile operators market, we can see that Europe kind of falls behind compared to other markets, Asiatic and American markets in particular, when we speak about the number of towers that are managed by independent operators like Tarco. A great number of BTS towers are not in the mobile operators' portfolio. There was a moment in time when they decided that these assets are of less strategic nature, and therefore the passive part of the network may be singled out and sold. Why do they do that? There is a reason. The assets appraisal is often much higher compared to the appraisal by the mobile operators' appraisal in the market. Many operators were able to unlock the value, which is a very nice phrase in English. They made this assets appraisal more feasible. If we look what has happened over last year, you'll find out a number of operators who've been very active in takeover and mergers processes when we speak about base stations. They consolidated the market, and the consolidation is higher compared to other countries in Europe. There's a pure market consolidation in many places that has been demonstrated. Was it Friday or Thursday last week when there was the final transaction consent between Imitel and Vodafone in Italy's market? At least some of the assets have been consolidated within the scope of one company. There's one very active player in the European market, and the name of this player is Cellnex. There is a similar situation, yet less dynamic, when we speak about fiber optics. There is a handful of examples in Europe. These assets have been singled out. Czechia, France, for example. And there is a number of further markets where we have observed these processes. These processes have been going on, be it the analysis or consent from the regulator phase. We speak about Sweden, Portugal, or Denmark. This is a very interesting theme worth looking into. Europe and other continents may continue this trend. And another topic which is related to previous ones: partnerships or operators' activities designed for joint ventures between operators themselves and operators and private equity or infrastructure funds. These processes, do they bring in any contribution for our business sector? Will they see the continuation is the question. We need to assume a multifaceted perception of the latter. Why are the processes taking place? On the one hand, it is a part of the operator strategy. Network sharing in Poland, which has been mentioned, is real. Not to a great scale yet, but more often than not do we hear that this process may continue. There are also joint market initiatives between financial investors and operators, or financial investors which jointly invest into fiber optic infrastructure. This is mainly in the open access model. There is yet another process trigger: risk sharing in the financial domain, or sharing the investment burden in order to deliver the processes. As we know, all financial assets are limited in the market, so this is a good way to overcome the barrier. There is, of course, an economic rationale that has been mentioned before: rural areas investments. From the point of view of one operator, these may not be attractive. And there is a regulatory aspect that comes at the end of the day. Partnerships that may be imposed by operators initially may evolve into commercial contract-based partnerships. Let's have a look at the 4 reasons that have triggered it, and this is enhanced with a handful of examples. Not only do we speak about a strategic aspect, because this is not the only reason for the situation. Spain, 3 operators shared the investments related to fiber optics infrastructure development. On the one hand, this might be a strategic decision. On the other hand, it might be economy-driven. The country was kind of divided, and each of the operators delivered their share in specific geographical locations and made the infrastructure available for other operators. Spanish example is hugely interesting. If there are fewer than 3 operators in the market, they need to grant open access to fiberglass according to legal regulations. Another example, when it comes to risk or finance burden sharing, can be found in United Kingdom. 2 infrastructure funds invested in city fiber. They took up the challenge. That was quite an aggressive fiber optics infrastructure rollout in Great Britain. A similar thing was observed in Germany. Glass fiber was supported by 2 infrastructure funds in order to share risks on the one hand, on the other hand, to accelerate the investment. Economic rationale. EU funds utilization for fiberglass investments in the rural areas is an excellent example. Such investments have we seen not only in Poland but also in many other countries, and these have been truly successful, such as Slovenia. There are certain areas that have seen 80% plus penetration for great investment success. Of course, there are less successful investment examples owing to greater challenges. These may stem from a model that was implemented or may result from the operator's strategic policies when it comes to infrastructure investment prices. And regulatory context in Poland to finish off. A few years ago, Play was granted the access to the infrastructure of the national players. That was the country's roaming, which made it possible to be operator number 4. It was very important for Play's development in the market. It was hugely successful. These agreements that were imposed by the operator, then transferred into commercial agreements to make it possible for play to continue this strategy. To wrap it up, consolidation processes may seem to continue in the market, though they may focus differently. To my liking, players will be more selective when it comes to acquisition and mergers objectives. On the other hand, the size of the players, the size of the organizations that merge may be of importance, yet lesser one. What will be more important is the actual synergy which results from the merger and acquisition. There is an important driver for the years to come which may boost consolidation processes or transactions as such. These are fiber optics investments and 5G investments too. Look and see who invests. Private equity and infrastructure funds are quite aggressive, investing into fiber networks. These will have to trigger further consolidation or acquisition processes because they'll be moving out. The regulator's role will be increasing. Should it be stronger? I don't know. But we've seen many market examples that indicated the regulator's role important. These processes must be streamlined in a better way. Players need to be ready to take up a discussion with a regulator in order to be given a consent at the end of the day. And the last question. Prospective partnerships or alliances in the telecom market. The examples that I have quoted and the examples referred to by the previous speakers have indicated that this trend will see a continuation. That has been a word of introduction. I believe that our guests, our panelists, will labor the point and will give their opinions to enrich my initial observations or what I believe and have presented in the course of the session. The first comment. First and foremost, I'd like to congratulate many of the colleagues who've joined us. Congratulations on what your companies have achieved, what you have recently presented. I'm speaking about telecom companies who have delivered excellent results, better than ever before, as it seems. So the first question to panelists is the trend indicating the end of the stagnant period. Are we going to see an uptrend in the market? And if so, how may this translate into operators' strategies when it comes to mergers and acquisitions? Expanding assets portfolio to include the elements they don't have at the moment. Andrzej, if you could start. Hello and welcome to all of you. I don't know, but Netia is not going to share their forecasts. Will it be important? Let's wait and see. The results that have been published have indicated that we've improved telecom profitability. The question is, how much will it be consumed by the expenditures? As Mr. President said, C-band auction conditions have been announced. We know the minimum requirements, and some of the income will be consumed through expenditure for C-band auction. Speaking about Polish operators' attitudes towards investments and mergers, pretty rational. They play safe. You have indicated this. Specific infrastructure elements appraisal is higher than the appraisal of the telecom operators, which means that telecom operators are not well estimated or underestimated if the part of the asset is higher of value compared to the whole. So we can still speak about the value increase in telecoms. We should assume two attitudes. The local one, Poland-focused, here and now. What is missing, technology, space, or solution-wise? Whatever is offered by the bodies in scope of interest of telecoms, fueled with the global outlook. European market consolidations, may this have an impact? May it enhance or infringe competition in Polish market? This must be taken into consideration, yet each telecom group may differ group to group. One correction. Never ever have we had domestic roaming regulated. P4 and other regulators were of commercial nature in mobile domain. It was supported by the regulatory body in some other parts. Yes. Equatel, we work in the B2B market. We have seen our clients becoming more active recently. However, a growth trigger is not attributed to the change in the telecom market situation change. Equatel and our competitors have been addressed by our clients because not only do they want telecom services, they want to have some kind of bundled services. Therefore, ICT sector becomes a sector of utilities. We are no longer so high-tech and cool. We become like any other sector, like power utilities, waterworks. Clients expect integrated, bundled services. Equatel margin improvement is related to the areas where on top of telecom services, what I call an income of infrastructure lease, is enhanced with added value. Private cloud, cyber solutions, mixed solutions that bundle a number of services together. Somebody else's R&D and their own products. We've got our own anti-DDoS software. So profitability is boosted here. Hello and welcome to all of you. The telecom market has kind of reversed the downtrend. Quite possibly we'll see the uptrend. Our financial results are based on a rational and effective business profile and activity. What is my perception of consolidation or sharing of infrastructure as discussed here? Last year, P4 bought a group of 3S companies. It was strategic and economic incentive behind the decision. We were looking into the efficiency of our own network or use of network of other entities. The same pertains to the use of towers. As you know, only recently have we announced the idea to share a part of our passive infrastructure, radio transmission infrastructure, namely. In Europe, we have seen a specific trend to do so. Because business activity should be more efficient and effective. It's a long-term rationale. When you have this economic attitude, this is not a flavor of the month that pushes for the decision. We experienced the year 2000, where there were specific businesses that were quite fashionable. They went bankrupt, and what was left was the mass, like global fiber networks that were purchased by somebody else. What we've seen now is more rational, based on rational attitudes, so that operators focus on efficient activity. It has been pushed by externalities. We need to have a holistic view over our business. If you cannot go up with the prices because clients got used to low prices, all operators must be on a lookout to find out ways to increase margin. Better utilization of the infrastructure and lowering costs attached to service provision is the key. Not only Play, but the whole business sector is facing a big project, 5G network development. It will consume lots of capital. We look for business models to bank on the investments ahead of us. The operators will be optimizing, will be reducing operational costs. This requires mergers, acquisitions, finding allies so that they control costs.
Yeah, hi. Switching to English. Thank you, Piotr, for the presentation, the question. So I share partially your optimism when it comes to the telco market in Poland. I think the opportunities we see are in the same time challenges, right? I mean, I think we're all scrambling, especially on the on the fixed sector. We're scrambling to get access to more and more customers today. That's one. Secondly, we are challenged, obviously, when it comes to ARPUs and monetizing innovation. Thirdly is the FMC, sort of a game which is still, I would say, at the early stage in Poland, and it's a big opportunity is happening. Fourthly is the efficient operations that we hear around, which is basically driven, I would say, by digital transformation. So all these four, I would say, challenges in the same time are big opportunities for us. And that's because the wholesale and the partnership type of deals are happening today. So I think the growth could come for operators like UPC, and not only from getting this kind of access deals to different other footprints, networks, technologies. We are becoming more and more, I would say, network or technology agnostic. So I would love to take our services to as many Polish families as possible, regardless of technology or infrastructure. Secondly, the ARPU, obviously it's been always a challenge in Poland, but at the same time we see it as an opportunity, because I don't think we'll be able to sustain €8 in average for a high-speed broadband connection when in Hungary is 11, in Czech is 16, and so on. So that could be that could change, and there is some rationality in the market today. Thirdly, the FMCI said it's an incipient stage. We believe hardly as well into fixed mobile convergence. And that could be an opportunity for mobile players to get access to fixed and for fixed to get access to mobile. And digitalization is clearly as well something we need to focus on as an industry, because if we want to level the playing field, we always talk about that with the OTTs and the new technology players, then we'll have to do something about the way we operate today. Now, if I pretty much agree with your conclusions as well. Now, apart from probably regulatory sort of intervention and role in this market, I'm happy to hear that the head of NRA, Marcin, is a fan of neoclassical economy. And I hope actually the competition authority acts in the same way. I think actually in this market we don't need that much intervention. And I believe as well consolidation and scale is still an important factor in the way that this market would evolve. Because let's not forget, we're still behind by 20 percentage points when it comes to fixed next generation access infrastructure in Poland versus the European median. So we need a lot of investment, being private, public, sponsored by EU and so on. But it's never going to be only one type of investment. We will need to have as well a private investment coming to help in this market. And then one more comment before I finish my first intervention on the wholesale type of access. We might be happy with it, but we don't know how is this going to turn in the end, because separating the infrastructure from the customer relationship basically assumes that profits as well will be split between the two type of operations, right? We're used and we know how to calculate profits and returns in a world where you sort of hold the end-to-end ownership of the process, from the infrastructure to the customer relationship. I don't know if the wholesale model would encourage, for example, innovation at the consumer level, because again, the ARPUs are very low and we're going to split 50-50 with the infrastructure owner. So how much actually innovation and competition we'll see at retail level, that's still a question to answer.
Piotr, wspomniałeś o dobrych wynikach w różnych...
Piotr, you mentioned good results in various aspects. That is true. When it comes to Orange Polska, we might speak a little bit more than just current results, because we are looking at long-term market. We are taking a much more long-haul approach to the market than these players on the market are. When the stock exchange is falling in 2014 or 15, we made the decision to invest into fiber optics, and we've been kind of very consistent in deploying this strategy. It is already delivering tangible results. We have already over 500,000 clients to our infrastructure that reaches a quarter of the Polish households already. Another important thing has to do with customer experience. I don't know if you noticed, but it has changed in the past 5 or 6 years. All in all, we have, all of us, increased our Net Promoter Score results in the past 6 years. Before that, most clients were not satisfied with our services. But as of today, we can proudly say that we represent companies that are delivering very well when it comes to the quality of customer service. the majority of our clients are satisfied. Piotr also touched on the pricing issue. Polish market is quite unique when it comes to our price levels. I can only quote individual examples throughout Europe that show that the prices might be lower than in Poland, but those are individual cases. Speaking to the consolidation thread that is going to be continued throughout our day-to-day, I will say that it definitely is significant. Mr. Cichy talked about 3,500 active operators working across Poland. They do deliver scale results, but such a high number of carriers means that they might not be fully efficient in all of the domains of their operations. And we need to resolve that question as well. Touching upon fiber optics, let me say the following. Fiber optics are already on the 5G list. Let's bear that in mind. 50% of the 5G functionality in the future will be based on good connectivity. The transmission will be delivered in its final stretch via radio channel to the client. When it comes to the investments in fiber optics, I will concur with what Piotr Kuriata talked about when he mentioned the unit costs of investment that we need to keep tags on. The energy sustainability aspects pose a challenge to all of us. We are talking about 5 to 7-fold less energy consumption compared to any other technology, especially when compared to radio technology, benchmarking against 1 gigabyte of sent data. So organically speaking, Orange is making progress, but we are also making important consolidation decisions. To quote an example, last year we increased our ICT portfolio by a very dynamic company that has been around on the ICT market under the name of Bluesoft. Thank you for that. I think that what Maciej said was already present in one of the answers given before in a survey that was carried out. The survey said that the consolidation is going to have to take place. Because companies that do not demonstrate out-of-the-box thinking are going to fall behind, especially long-term, strategically speaking, and they will not gain competitive advantage anymore. We talked about the unique situation of the Polish pricing. Let me say the following to that. I've been working with private equity funds and other investors in Poland, and they always bring that issue up. They always ask me questions along the lines of Poland being the lowest priced market apart from maybe, well, Romania and 1 or 2 other markets where the pricing is even lower than in Poland. But then I always reply to those investors, look at the efficiency of those Polish companies, I say. When you benchmark their performance against their competition, their EBITDA margins are comparable, if not higher, oftentimes than in other markets. Let me ask the following question that somehow segues from what Robert says. I remember a discussion that I had with Robert some time ago on the role of the regulator and how it might increase in the future. I'd like to put forward a thesis that I did before. I'm not saying that this is how things should go, but the question is, do you agree with me, my fellow panelists that the role is going to increase in the consolidation process, the regulatory role. I'm talking about the whole of consolidation processes. I'm not talking about niche-related increase of assets of particular carriers, because, well, in that aspect, with those aspects in mind, some trades or transactions were approved by the regulator within days on the Polish market. But apart from that, do you believe that the role of the regulator is going to go up? And to what extent? What should be the role of the regulator on the market in Poland? Maciej, over to you. Let me begin by saying that when it comes to the involvement of the regulator, what we have seen is primarily shared testing of different solutions, as if we were to call it regulatory sandbox operations. What we need to do is to take a future-proof look at where this market is going to be 5 or 10 or 15 years from today. We have a certain legacy on the market today. I am making reference to the energy consumption of today because today's network is energy consuming. The telco and IT solutions within the next 3 to 5 years are going to reduce the energy consumption, are going to use 20 or 30% of energy around the world. So our industry is a big player and highly consuming of energy across the world. We need to optimize this field. Maybe we should do it jointly, also through the lens of legislation. So on the one hand, we have this legacy solutions. We have copper networks that are energy consumption heavy, and maybe we could use other solutions that could allow other carriers like Orange to smoothly migrate to from those legacy solutions to new ones based on the right regulatory frameworks. That's how I see it.
A few considerations. I don't look at the regulators as the policemen of this industry, right? So I look at it more of a partner in that sense, and I'm pretty happy with the level of dialogue we get with both the NRA and the Consumer Competition Authority today. I would love to have more of that because I think that's very important to keep the dialogue going. I think as well the regulators should take a longer view at the industry and understand how this industry should shape in order to serve the consumer interest at best in the next 5-10 years. I don't think two players, for example, FMC companies is competition. 3, 4 arguably, but not 100. For sure. So consolidation is something, if I was the regulator, it's something that I would encourage and like to have, but because only highly, let's say, high capacity type of companies with the power to invest a lot of capex in the years to come are going to transform this market for the better. So that's my take. I think when it comes to again consumer and competition authority, I would like to have really a honest and transparent dialogue on how can we improve our practices, but in the same time, what is it or what's the best way to get to a more consolidated market. I opened this conversation many times as well. How to balance between the need to monetize the investment and keep the operators like us, in control or in checks when it comes to the market practices. But we have to find the right balance between the need to monetize and the need to protect consumer interest. And today I think we're doing a great job because, as I said, the ARPUs, you said it as well, are at one of the lowest levels in Europe. And I might say as well the quality of our services, being fixed or mobile, are pretty high. So.
To pytanie.
Piotr, the question you posed with regards the market that should be even more regulated, and what is the role of the regulator? This question has been reiterated ever since the regulatory body were created in Poland. Not only do we speak about Poland, what is the role of regulators? How can they shape different business sectors? Telecom, that is network-based industry, finds the regulator's role vital. This may lead to good and bad results. In holistic kind of business sectors, like mobile phones, mobile telephony, there are limited resources frequency-wise, which makes it impossible to have an indefinite number of operators, carriers, so the market monopolizes by nature. This is economic theory as such, but the same applies to the regulatory or bureaucratic part of the story. The more the regulator has got in hand, the more they want to have. And we need to find the golden mean, the balance that requires regulators' knowledge on the markets they do regulate, and we have observed great improvement over a 10-year period. Much has changed for better. What else do we need? Imagination. A lot of imagination on how regulatory activities may impact the market. Not only do we speak locally, but globally, Europe-wise, worldwide. Companies originate from different places in the world. They might have their own ideas how to do business. This local perspective may not necessarily lead to positive outcome on what is the regulator's role, because regulators need to protect clients, because protection of competition is protection of clients at the end of the day. So regulators' role is vital. In my opinion, never will it be lesser than today. But I do agree with what Robert was saying. Dialogue, learning from one another, on the line, regulator and business players, open dialogue concerning objectives. If somebody has got a hidden agenda that the business sector may not understand, there'll be no self-regulation mechanism in place, and self-mechanism is possible. There's been a number of attempts with this regard in Poland. The regulators are going to stay in. Their role will not be diminishing because their objective is client protection. I don't think any regulator would give up on that field for sheer market mechanisms as such. Let me put it this way. Speaking about consolidations, Polish regulator enjoys a long-standing history-related traditions to make the market competitive, especially when we speak about the macro level. There is a sub-question that was not voiced in the main question. A regulator, regulatory policy, will it push SMEs and SMEs owners to sell off their businesses? Because this business may not be profitable any longer. We've seen a great consolidation of small local carriers and operators. This was quite a vibrant one. Those who set up their businesses in the 90s seized this opportunity to sell off their businesses and go into some other business sectors. Speaking about Poland, EU funds, policy, and all kinds of subsidies for ICT market plays a more important role. Its objective is to subsidize bigger market entities. We've seen it over the 5-year period time. That was quite apparent. This pushes away SMEs or pushes them to consolidate. What makes them stay in the market is the fact that the big players, the moguls, have problems to reach particular clients and therefore to provide services. I live in Warsaw, but there's not a single big operator that is able to offer me fixed internet connection. So I can imagine that outside big cities this problem might be even greater. So it makes the SME companies stay alive. Regulatory policy, that was the question. A regulator in Poland should assume a more strategic line of thinking on the telecom situation in Poland, because for many years in Poland, a regulator has concentrated on competitive market with low prices. They've delivered the objective. The Internet of Things, smart things, 5G, AI in control, and the advent of these things has brought about the idea of public life in this sphere, its impact on the economy. And regulatory policy should be in line with that, so that Poland is self-sustained cyber-wise. And being self-sustained cyber-wise is much broader than governments, prime ministers, or minister of digitization responsibility. It should be a part of the regulator's policy too. So where are we supposed to deliver this connection? Where do you live? What's your abode? Ah, just kidding. There are 6 of us sitting here and talking. We keep talking about a regulator, but we need to realize there are more and more regulators. Different governments, agencies aspire to harvest information from telecom business sector. This telecom business sector is the best recognized by different regulatory bodies in Poland. As the result, we pay fines most often, be it our fault or not. It doesn't matter whether the court of law is going to sustain the decision or not. My point of view, a regulator, no matter what kind of regulator, is provided information from government agencies. There are multi-month processes before a consent to consolidate is issued, may impact a business. As long as you are subject to this kind of scrutiny or control, the business is put on a hold, and this may impact the business as usual in the body that takes over and in the body that is taken over. So I'd like to request the regulatory body to work closer. And should there be any consolidation processes, this cooperation would speed up the decision-making process without this big impact on our day-to-day business. I agree with what the president of Axetel said. There is a kind of national regulatory policy in place, expressed through development directions for the state as whole. And the regulatory bodies that decide about consolidations and day-to-day business should take the latter in their decisions. First and foremost, they should not assume here and now perspective. They should look at the broader, more distant in time objective and the results in relations with the end clients, but not only relations between telecom bodies, relation between client, the state, telecom companies, the state. What would be the way to offer mutual support in delivering national plans that are of a long-term nature? Because today, a decision of this or that regulatory body may slow down or enhance delivery of the government's national-focused policy. Therefore, my appeal, the regulators should cooperate closely because they impact the way we run day-to-day business. A friend of mine said such a thing, and it refers to what Mr. Cichy said. The administration should be able to keep up the pace of clients' requirements and our implementations. Our clients come and say they want to have better cars, better equipped, electric cars, better engines, better motors, red padded seats. But the regulators still offer us obsolete old cars.